Today I'm going to share with you a posture that I teach, which is one of the foundations of yoga for intuitive development. I call it the flowering root. Now the flowering root is a modified forward bend. The upper body is similar to that in downward facing dog, and then the lower body is similar to that in a standing forward bend. The reason this posture is one of the foundations of yoga for intuitive development is that, first of all, it's a forward bending pose. And forward bending poses are inward turning poses. And anytime you want to access your intuitive clarity, it requires going within. So just the basis and foundation of this posture is inward turning, and it supports that form of clarity. Now the second reason is, unlike a standing forward bend, the flowering root focuses on stretching through your pelvic floor. Forward bend, hamstrings; flowering root, pelvic floor. And this is really important because your pelvic floor holds and expresses the energetics of how safe you feel in the world. If you're not feeling safe in the world, you're going to clench or draw in through your pelvic floor, much like a dog when they're scared will put its tail between its legs. And this is significant for intuitive clarity because if you're not feeling safe, you're not going to be receptive to receive intuitive information that's coming to you. So being able to open and expand through your pelvic floor is really helpful in developing greater access to your intuitive clarity. And then the final reason that I teach this pose as one of the foundations for yoga for intuitive development is it stretches through your posterior chain. The posterior chain is what's behind your back, or what is unseen. And the unseen is connected to our subconscious. Intuition, or superconsciousness, is accessed by the access to your superconsciousness is related to how much of you is conscious and how much of you is in subconscious investments. Because we stretch through the posterior chain, what that does is it gives you greater access to the energetics held in your back or in your posterior chain, and when you release them, it softens subconscious investments and increases superconscious clarity. This is a really wonderful pose. It's meant to be gentle, where the focus is more on releasing than actively stretching. Let me teach you how to do it. Okay, now in the flowering root, you're gonna need some blocks. If you have tight hamstrings, you're gonna want something higher than blocks, a chair. That's because what we don't wanna do is overemphasize the hamstring stretching. So here's what you do. Feet are hip width apart and parallel to one another. Hands are on the blocks, and they're a little bit in front of the shoulders. So instead of directly below, you want a little bit out in front so that you're getting some of the elongation that you would get in downward facing dog. Next, you want to bend the knees so that you're releasing the stretch in through your hamstrings. As you do so, widen through your pelvic floor. You're doing that by drawing the inner edges of your thigh bones back and apart and expanding through the base of your pelvis. Next, with your hands on the blocks, press in through your hands, lengthen through the back of the neck, get your shoulder blades to sit flat on your back, and then start to expand out through the pelvic floor. You want to notice, is your low back arching or rounding, or can you come into a neutral spine? If you can't get a neutral spine, raise your hands up so that you can effortlessly do this. If you have a mirror, it can be really helpful to get clear on if you're in an anterior tilt or a posterior tilt. And what we don't want is a posterior tilt. As soon as you go posterior, your SI joints start to disintegrate, your body's gonna go into guarding, you're gonna lose the receptivity in this posture. So once you're here, tilting forward, soften, press down through your feet, root through your hands, lengthen through the upper back, and then we're going to inhale and move back, and then exhale, move forward. Inhale, move back, and exhale, move forward. Now you'll notice the breath is different than what is typical in a yoga posture. Normally we inhale on the strengthening and exhale on the release. Instead, in this pose, we're inhaling on the release, which is as you push your hips back. And that's because when you inhale, your diaphragm drops down, creating space for your organs, and that creates room to expand all through your pelvic floor. So you can try breath both ways, but my advice, especially if you're tight in through your pelvic floor, inhales as you expand back. Let's do that one more time. Hands on the floor or hands on blocks. And even if you're super flexible, raise your hands up. I want this to not be a hamstring stretch primarily. Bend your legs until you feel a release in through your pelvic floor, and you can get an anterior tilt in your pelvis.
And then lengthen the upper body, root through your hands, and then inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And then you can come out of the posture.
Because the flowering root is such a supported posture, you can do this for very long periods of time. I personally have been known to have been doing it for upwards to 5 minutes. And throughout that time, I'm noticing the relationship of tension holding in my body. I find for a lot of students I teach, and especially also in myself, the relationship between the soles of my feet, or how grounded I am, shifts through the posture. And what you're looking to do is stay really grounded through your feet throughout the entire pose. Try this several times. You may notice when you come out of the pose, especially if you've really honored your boundaries and been able to release into the posture, you may actually find you get a little bit dizzy as you come out of the pose. And that's just as your body recalibrates to the new energetic state that you're in. If this sounds like something you're interested in studying, I teach yoga for intuitive development, whether it's through workshops or retreats throughout the year. If you go to my website, Colinmatthews.ca, you can see where my latest offerings are. I'd love to teach you in this practice and help you to deepen your connection to your intuitive clarity. Thanks for watching.